Well, this is a picture of my new bus machinery company jointer. It's an 8-inch jointer, even though the ad said 18, so I was all excited because it was an 18. It was a great deal for 18. It was not a great deal for an 8, but it saved it from the scrap things, so that's fine. It's 87 inches long. The infeed is like 12, 13 inches wide. The outfeed is 16 inches wide. It has a Babbitt, or I should say a Rabbit, on the outfeed table, and has Babbitt bearings. And it was very heavy. And the wood thing is super heavy, and that's a dust collection thing underneath, and it looks in good shape. So far so good. This is when we first saw it outside. Cord comes in, ground goes around to attach to the wire nut. Black from the cord goes here, white from the cord goes there. This is what happens when you take everything you can possibly think of to try and go pick up a tool an hour away. There's a jack, there's 8 2x4s, a bunch of long pieces of plywood, a bunch of other scrap plywood, 3 dollies, a bunch of floor mats. This is what happens when you try and screw it down. My friend Dan, yay Dan, you're in fixtures. We screwed a bunch of wood all around the legs. We lag bolted the unit 2x6s effectively, and then screwed all that down to plywood so it wouldn't move side to side or towards the front. So it basically was jammed all along the floor because we can't screw into the floor. Not sure why these are sideways, but we put boards all over it to keep it from moving front, back, sideways. It didn't move on the hour trip coming home, so that was the best part. We got it home nice and safe. And here it does fit in the garage. That's approximately where it's going to go. Of course, it doesn't look like that because there's stuff all around it. And it can't really run there because it's too close to things, but it fits. So the last time I had electrical work done, we had the hot tub circuit or sub panel adjusted such that we had a 220 in and a 110 in. That worked great. However, I now have the new jointer, which is 220, so I need another 220 outlet. So the plan is going to be to get another outlet. This time it's going to be a twist lock because we're going to have an extension cord. That way the cord doesn't unplug. It's nice with the dust collector, even though the socket is slowly getting worn by plugging and unplugging it, because the dust collector sits like right here. But the other one is going to be across the room, and since there's going to be an extension cord, we don't want that to disconnect. So we're going to use the locking style outlet for that. So hopefully that'll get sorted out tomorrow, and then I can test things out. And for that, here is the plug on the jointer cord. It's a giant thick 12-3 cord, and I have a thinner 12-3 cord to use for the extension cord. And then this box is what attaches to the jointer, and I currently have it set up such that it is attached to the motor from the jointer, which is a farm duty motor. I don't know if that's readable, but basically it's 10.5 amps at 230 volts, 2 horsepower. And so I have that screwed down to the plywood. Plywood's attached to the bench. The bench wobbles because it's up on its wheels, but that way I can test and turn on the motor. It does make a squeaking noise. I may take this off. Well, before I use the joiner for real, I'm going to take this apart and clean it. So, but it should be fine to test for just making sure that the power works. So, see how that goes. Well, I'm not sure why there's a piece of fishing line or something equivalent that was stuck in this spot. But that's not what's causing the squeaking. The squeaking is yeah, that's not ideal. So I'm probably going to have to take that apart and see. Maybe the bearing was bad or something. But, yeah. Oh well, I'll deal with that next. A lot of this where I take the end cap off for the fan cooling area. I was trying to figure out how to get that off. Obviously, you'll see, I didn't have tools for most of this, so it's like, okay, I don't have the tools for that yet. Try and do the other side. You can see all the corrosion and rust on these pieces. It cleans up much better with the evaporust later, but you see how dark these are, especially the part where the bolts are screwing into. This is supposed to be one of those things where it bolts together and clamps on, and then you put the bolts down in the other two holes, and it pushes itself apart so you can get it off. But it was all rusted solid, and I realized before I put WD-40 on my nice wood mats, or should they say the silicone things I use for my wood projects, I should just put some, throwaway old cardboard. And then I can use the WD-40 and get it soaking on both sides. And I tried taking the spring clip off. That worked after I switched the pins out, but I still couldn't get the fan off. And so that went off and on a few times. And initially I thought that was something you turn. It is not. It's just something that sits on. But it was just it's plastic, but the rust on the shaft and the goo on the shaft had gotten it stuck, and I didn't want to break it. So I put that all back together here in a little bit, and then decided to just work on the top part. Of course, it was off camera. After sitting for like 15-20 minutes with the WD-40, it separated when I just turned real easy, and then you saw there it lifts up. So I just cleaned that up, take the rubber washer off, get the little pin out, or the key rather, and that all worked. So next I have to figure out what to do, just wipe things up and get deciding here I gotta use evaporust. So that actually came out really cool. You can see that's a split piece that's tapered, that fits down in that taper with a key, and when you have the 3 bolts that pull together, that squeezes the taper, or squeezes the 2 parts together, which squeezes the taper together, which grips on the shaft, and then you use the other 2 holes to push it apart. I was worried that it wasn't going to work, but with some WD-40 and some very light tapping with a screwdriver, it actually came out nice. So that's cool. And there's another tapered, I don't know if that'll show tapered. On the very edge it looks like it's tapered. If it's tilted right. Yeah, it goes straight and then this way. And that matches the slot in the shaft, which goes in and then slants up. So that I know that because that slants up, that's where that's supposed to go. So we'll see how well that goes back together, but that's cool. It came apart. So watching all those videos from Keith Rucker on vintage machinery helped, because I knew to do that. I put this back on so I didn't smash it. But there is a plastic fan in here that is behind a snap ring, and it was not coming off the shaft. So I need to get that off too in order to take the motor apart, I think, to figure out where the squeal is, because the squeal is still there. With the cover off, it sounds like it's inside. So something inside is squeaking. And so here, once again, I'm taking this off because I'm going to try this time to get the thing open. So I got the clamps, or the spring clip off. That worked. And then now it's been sitting a while, I figured, alright, we'll try and, what can I use to pry it? I had one of those baseboard things, and just tapping with the hammer loosened it up enough, and that popped off. So that was awesome. Cleaned it up with a wire brush, and that was much better on that end. And now I can try and figure out, and it initially, since the M4 bolt on that pulley section was there, I figured, okay, these are metric. These were not metric. This is an old enough motor that it had actual SAE things. On the bolt head side, it was a 5/16, and then it was a couple sizes up from that for the nuts. But then eventually, after working at it, it comes off, and then I was able to get the pieces out. It took a bit. I had to use the 2 ratchets, but eventually those things came out, and then I figured, all right, I'm gonna tap all this, get it you know, because it was stuck on. I think it was painted shut to some extent too. I figured, all right, I finally got it loose enough. Tapping, tapping, tapping. You don't want to break anything because it's a working motor. You try not to break those things. Then it's like, oh boy, that's not good. That's not what I was expecting. Well, I got it apart, sort of. There are all sorts of weird things down in there that I do not recognize. I'm guessing that's... I have no idea. There are wires sticking out and running to things. Maybe that's the brushes or something? I can't tell. And I know this camera can't pick it up, but there's something very strange in there on this end. And I'm sure and it looks like it's screwed into the end cap. There's like 4 or 5, no, there's 6 little round things. See if I can get the light. Where is the light compared to the camera? There we go. Okay, that little round thing that just disappeared. There it is. Right there. There's 6 of those around a circle on something that's has multiple layers, and yeah, I have no idea what that is. But since I don't know what it is, and it is partly screwed to the end cap, I am just going to try and carefully put that back on, and we will not worry about it. We will hope the noise is fine. It does look like there's some slight rust down in there, right at the shaft level, like at the same area where this is on the outside. I don't know if that's visible or not. Somewhere in there. But yeah, that's not something I understand. And since the motor worked, it was just squeaky. I don't really want to break it just because I don't understand it. So I'm going to try and put it back together. So since I decided to put that back together and not play with it, I reversed the steps and tapping and using the 2 ratchets and got it back together. And then it's like, wait, this is taking too long. Get the little nut driver, tighten it up, decently, and then go that route. And get that all cleaned up, put that back on, put the spring clip on. That part's all good. Clean it up, put the fan housing back on. That went pretty good. Then get some 400 grit sandpaper and start cleaning up some of the mating surfaces. And again, here I realized somewhere I gotta clean this up. I gotta put it into Vaporust. I wasn't sure if this bucket had no holes, so I tried with the bag. Turns out the parts put holes in it. I ended up using almost 2 gallons to get it covered, but that worked fine. I have a total, I think, 4 gallons that I bought from the previous restorations, and so that's all good. And there you can see, initially I only had it covered for, just a little bit, but later I covered it with more. And here's after 2 hours. It worked amazing like always, and everything just looked almost like new. And so after this, I scrubbed it a little bit with the toothbrush, and then took it out in the yard and washed it off. That all worked. Evaporust for the win, again. So the bolts had a little bit of rust on. Not super noticeable, but just enough to be annoying. This thing, that cleaned up super. From here, basically everywhere that was not touching, it was rusted the whole way up over, down across. Now it's all nice. So that's good. That worked out. This one still has a little bit of either dust or rust up in the depths of it. I'm not sure. You can kind of see it's slightly brown, but it's painted and all the inside was good. And it had a little bit in the grooves where the belt goes. And there's still a little bit in there, but it's much better than it was. So you can see that's a little bit of rust, but yeah, I got most of it. It probably could have gone longer, but since that's a mating surface, I did not want to mess that up. Anytime you have a surface that's supposed to match another surface, you really don't want to mess that up for a taper, because that's a bad thing. So now I can work on putting it back together. I did spray all the surfaces with dirt and dust resistant dry lube. I think it's just supposed to be dry in there. I don't think it's supposed to have oil and such, but now it's time to put it back together. And if you remember what it looked like in the earlier part of the video, it's night and day different. And here I just wanted to clean up the key before I got it in there, because it was a very snug fit and I didn't want to have it back too far. But if you compare the pulley and especially that outside piece to the earlier parts in the video, that's a night and day difference. And oh boy, does it work much better this way. So initially it's like, okay, that's way not far enough on. So using the little mini sledge and a piece of 2x4, that worked good. And then it's like, okay, I better try and put some sort of anti-seize kind of thing on those bolts. So I just sprayed some of the PTFE WD-40, the anti-dust, anti-whatever. That should be fine. And here I just again used the 4mm wrench. Now I'm getting ready to get it all sorted and tested. And so vacuum out the rest of the dust, reconnect the wiring based on the previous, black to the black section, white to the white section, make sure the cord is properly attached so it doesn't have problems with the strain relief. So get the white, black, ground. Ground has a wire nut, but that's fine, that works. And then get that on, and that's all good. Get that all. Realize that the right hand side that goes for the plug wasn't tight, so had to tweak that. But now close it up, and we're all good and ready to go. And then I got the screws again and screwed it down to the base, or I should say screwed it down to the plywood with short enough screws that it doesn't go down into the bench. Then get some clamps, clamp it down. It's nice and tight and ready to go. And here we go. Start it up. And then stop it. And there was lots of noise. And with that weighted pulley and that weighted end, this thing runs forever. I think this is actually a real time. Yeah, this section is actually real time, so you could see how long it takes to spin down. And I think that's about 45 seconds or so to spin down, or at least it's over 30 seconds to spin down. So that's cool. But yeah, that's awesome. Very happy with how that worked. I did figure out based on this that there's those little flywheels are, I think, speed sensors to keep it from turning on or something with the motor. That's what those weird things I didn't recognize were. Guess who gets to take this back off so I can put this on there? That is supposed to go in there. I don't know that it does much, but it's supposed to go in there. Crap. Oh well. Now I get to see if cleaning it up works better to take it off. Oh my gosh. That comes off so much easier now that all the corrosion's out. Wow. That actually was not even annoying. I just tightened it down, and with just a little bit of force, these were now able to push the inner pulley off here, and then a little gentle prying with the screwdriver and it all popped off. That's awesome. This was definitely a success. And nice and quick, it's back on, and the little rubber O-ring or gasket or whatever the heck that's called, the rubber washer is up in. It's right there. And these are all tight. And that's awesome. It still makes a noise. But I think that's because, so things I have learned with this. One, these are 14mm bolts. I don't know why those are 14mm bolts, but they are. This thing, now that it's not all rusted, it says Browning 0178M. So I'm assuming that's related to either the way the taper is or something. So 7/8 is possibly the shaft. I didn't measure that when I had it off, but that's possibly the shaft. And so that's probably related to that. But this goes together really nicely. It spins true. The motor spins for a really long time after you power it off, probably because these are heavy and it has good bearings. So I'm guessing that means the bearings are good, which is good. When it's spinning down, the same place in this section where I found that weird contraption that looked like it had little flywheel things or little pieces that would tend to, you know, fling out under certain conditions and relax with the spring and others. That's what that looked like in there. The reason I didn't take it apart. I didn't want to mess that up. So as it's spinning down, it does make noise, but as it's spinning down, there's a point in the spin down process when you can hear it go clunk, like those things have retracted. So I'm guessing just that noise that I'm hearing is the noise that that stuff makes. I'm not sure. I mean, there's things that rub in there. I don't know. In any case, I'm not worried about it now that I know what it is. I know it's not just something rubbing on something else. It's a mechanism that's rubbing and making the noise. So I'm okay. Even if it's a mechanism I don't understand, I at least know what is causing it, and it's not something that's just rubbing against the case, that, you know, something along those lines. I think everything's fine. It's just that that mechanism that has the spin up, spin down piece makes noise. That's fine. The motor spins. It works good. This switch works. I may replace it at some point with a more modern 220 volt stop switch, because this is not real easy to stop it for emergencies like those big paddle switches. For now, until I get this all going to make sure that it's going to be something that works in my workshop, because I'm not even 100% sure that's going to work for me for what I need. In which case, there's no sense spending more money on a switch than, you know, if you don't need to. But in any case, this part of the project is done. I am now satisfied with the motor and understand the motor. And we now have electrical. So there's this big cord, fairly thick. That's like 3/4 inches thick. This is 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So this one comes off of the switch box that's over there. That will plug into, because since the unit is way over there by the garage door, that will plug into this extension cord. This extension cord, this is a 12-3 wire. This is a 12-3 extension cord with the 220 lock connectors. I think if I understood the electrician correctly, this is a either a 30 amp connector, and these are 20 amp connectors. I'm not sure. I don't know. But in any case, this will not plug directly into the wall, but it will plug into the extension cord, and then the extension cord plugs into the wall in the new circuit. So this is the new 220 circuit. This was the old existing dust collector circuit, and that's my 110 circuit. So yeah, that's all good.